Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. Well, Jason Harris is on the show today.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. That was a fun conversation. They're all fun to
Yes,
me,
of course, yeah.
He's the CEO of award-winning creative agency called Mekanism. That's with a K, Mekanism. He's a co-founder of the Creative Alliance. Works closely with brands through a blend of soul and science to create provocative campaigns to engage audiences. He's worked with Peloton, Ben & Jerry's, Miller Coors, HBO, Disney. He's been named one of the top 10 most influential social impact leaders, as well as 4A's list of 100 people who make advertising great. So when I read this book, The Soulful Art of Persuasion, I think, oh, well, a marketing guy, advertising, it's going to fit into what we talked about.
Right.
And I was pleasantly surprised when I read his book, and then when we talked in the conversation, he talks about a lot of stuff we talk about here in Next Level Method, right? Like how to become more authentic, how to be more transparent. What he talks about, more soulful. So what were your takeaways from today's
I think it was just cool to see, he's focused on contribution. How can I give back personally, like in relationships, and what can I do to add value to this relationship? How can I give back in this relationship? And reaching out, when people reach out to you, respond, especially if they're looking for advice or help or feedback, right? That just make those human connections, and having that commonality in those connections, right? That was really cool. And then that purposeful side of just living life on purpose and having something tied to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately, he talked about fulfillment, and it's really hard to find fulfillment if it's not connected to other people or something greater than yourself, right?
I think there's a lot of stuff here about improving. I think for me, when I'm looking at our pillars, that their energy, relationships, purpose, a lot of stuff we talked about fits into what we're talking about. And I think to his core beliefs, we deep dive in all four of these. It's in his book, Soulful Art of Persuasion, but we talk about it's about being original, about being generous, about being empathetic, and about being soulful.
Yep.
A lot of great nuggets in this conversation. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this. Anything else any other major takeaways? For me, it was about being curious. I love the conversation about being curious.
Right.
Being original, kind of letting your freak flag fly. That's hard to say. Freak flag fly.
Yeah.
But I love this concept. I just thought he was a great guest.
Yep. Great guy.
Go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more about our services. And if you can, call to action. Make sure that you're following us on your favorite podcast application as well as on social media. We're all over the place, but it would be a huge help if you followed us, if you subscribed on your favorite podcast application, and wrote a review.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Tongue twisters today.
Yes.
So. All right. Here's our great conversation with Jason Harris here on Next Level Method. Well, Jason, it's nice to have you on the show. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I picked up your book, The Soulful Art of Persuasion, and I opened it up, and it really spoke to me because, we're all living through this kind of crazy social media world where everybody's got a position. They have their positions, they stake their flags, and everybody's right, everybody else is wrong. Right. We're turning into these tribes, and your book, your opening paragraph really spoke to me because it talked about, hey, look, we need to start to seek to understand each other. We need to learn to become more soulful. We need to start learning how to build trust with each other. I don't know. I thought it was a great way to open the book. I thought I was going to be reading a marketing book, which it kind of is, but it really goes deeper than that. So I wanted to thank you for having such a soulful opening to your book.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Yeah.
I
appreciate that.
And I highlighted here on the first page where we says, logical arguments, and this is what everybody tries to do. They try to lawyer up, or they try to come at you with logic, and you tell us that logical arguments force us to accept certain conclusions. But soulful persuasion, which I really want to talk about here, attracts people to you, right? And that's the difference. And so genuine persuasion is about engaging instead of insisting. I absolutely love that. I just nailed it on the head. Can you speak to that a little more?
Yeah, sure. And I can, if I can, just sort of take one step back and talk about the genesis for the book. And I work in an advertising business my entire career, and I run an advertising agency. And it's something that I was passionate about. I knew I wanted to get into that business when I was a kid. I knew I was entrepreneurial and wanted to start my own at some point. I've been running it for about 15 years. And I read a Gallup poll, and the Gallup poll said the most or the least trustworthy professions in America
Right.
were number one, um, congressperson, number two, used car salesperson, and then number three, advertising practitioner. And so for me, in an industry I love, the world does view it as really dishonest. In fact, there was a poll that came out from the 4As, which is part of our industry, and it said 96% of people hate advertising, but 97% of people love brands. And so, doing my craft and what I've always, strived and did my entire career, I really took offense to that idea that we were coming across as dishonest. And so the soulful persuasion idea really started as I've built a business, I've done this work, and I've done it really in a way that maybe is counter to the perception. And the idea of persuasion is when you're talking to an audience or you're talking to your mother-in-law or anyone, persuasion isn't about facts or arguments when you're building your
Mm-hmm.
personal brand or a brand. It's really about personal character. And if people can trust the brand or the person that's saying whatever they're saying, that's more important than throwing facts and figures and data and numbers at someone or logic. It's about, is this authentic? Is this person real? Does this person or brand have values that I care about? And so I wanted to sort of, take back that building your personal brand's okay. Building a brand and advertising to connect with consumers is okay. And persuasion itself, the word is okay. It's the soulful persuasion, that juxtaposition. You can do it. You can become more influential, but you can do it in a way that is valuable to people and is about is character building, not character destroying. And so that's really how I built my career and my viewpoint. And that's what I guess how I persuaded myself to write the book.
Yeah, I love all of
Yeah.
that, and it speaks to, I think, again, particularly now it seems to be on steroids, and I'm sure it's because of social media and everything else, where everybody kind of stakes their claims and everybody likes what I call lawyer up and present with the facts. And then, but when you think about, and even when you hear people like, well, here's all the data, here's the science, whatever this or that, and the reality is, and you pointed out in your book, that when I seek whatever advice, I don't got the time or the energy to understand something complex. So when I approach somebody that has a tremendous amount of what I consider high character traits, right? And I just kind of trust them, or they've persuaded me because of their character, right? They could have all
Exactly.
the charts and the data and everything else, but if I don't trust the person who's presenting it, it's immaterial, and it just, that's what people seem to be missing when they're trying to get these messages across. And like, if you kind of violate the character code, you could have all the data in the world and it doesn't mean anything. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean,
And something the term you're using, persuasion, and I kind of think of, okay, what's the opposite of persuasion is maybe manipulation, right? So how am
Right.
how am I influencing people through my actions, through my decisions, through the life I'm living,
Right.
versus manipulating them into doing something that they may or may not want to do, right? Probably don't want to do if I'm manipulating them, right?
Yeah, and persuasion can be manipulation because there's positive ways to persuade and there's negative ways to persuade, and both can be effective, but one's short term, one's
one,
transactional, and one is long term. One's playing the long game, and that's that character building one. And which you touched on something that you're kind of Richard hitting on sort of around, which is this idea that people have a hard time connecting today. We are bifurcated into our little, echo chambers through social media, and we want, do you believe in the vaccine? Do you not believe in the vaccine? Do you like this guy running for office or not
Right.
this guy running for office? Do you, whatever it is, the sort of zeitgeist of the country and the world has lost this idea of the connection points between all of us. And, in fact, we're all 99.9% the same DNA. There's
Right.
0.1% of all DNA in us that makes us unique. That's our unique part. But think of all the commonalities we have at birth and how much we mentally think we're so different when we're all very similar.
Hmm.
And so I always try to think about that in persuasion when I'm either in work or in my personal life. We're all going through stuff, right? We're
Hmm.
all going through the human experience, and there's so much that unites us, but the way that we converse or the way that we huddle into our little areas of comfort, I think is really something that has gotten worse and worse, and
Yeah.
the healthy dialogue has just been lost. It's whatever you can do to step on someone's head that you don't agree with to get ahead. I think is really not great. And whole fake news thing and just debunking that it's hard to know what's true anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But what we do know as humans is we all have really natural bullshit detectors,
Hmm.
and when someone, whether they're throwing facts and arguments at you, if and you might not know it immediately, but you have a sense like, I'm not sure this person's character is genuine. And if you don't know it right away, you'll discover it very quickly.
Yeah, it always amazes me that we don't give ourselves enough credit after all these years of evolution, how we're wired, how much we're able to pick up through intuition and through our gut feel
Hmm.
what's right and what's wrong, right? And even subconsciously, and you talk about it a lot in your book. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it
Hmm.
in Blink,
Hmm.
the same thing.
Yeah,
That how
exactly.
that we can, and it kind of goes against our nature because we're told not to judge a book by its cover, but
Hmm.
it's deeper than judging by its cover. It's like tapping into that kind of intuitive, like, hey, the hairs on the back of my neck are bristling,
Right,
because
right.
that was there because saber-toothed tiger's about to, leap from the tree above me and something doesn't seem right.
Right.
Exactly.
And as a pilot, that happens all the time. We're told to trust that, particularly when we're going through things and things are
Mhm.
abnormal. Checklists and like, if you feel that, you're supposed to stop it. And I'm telling you, 99% of the time, there's something amiss. It could be something
Hmm.
small,
Right.
but it's getting to your point though about how we have way more intuitive power than we believe, and also I think we have way more influence to change the situation because it can seem so overwhelmingly negative. But after reading your book and surrounding myself by people like you, Jason, that we can make a difference here, and I think that's when I walk away from your book. I feel like I have the tools now to make a difference. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's great.
We have way more
yeah, I love
influence.
it.
We have way more influence than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I've been, we're in this space, so I'm constantly listening to books on audio and reading books. And so the book I'm currently reading it's called The Eye of the Eye by Dr. Hawkins, and he talks about these consciousness levels, basically influence, right? And so you get over like 200, which is courage, and you're affecting thousands of people with your basically positivity, right? But it's not positive like, yeah, it's just the fact that you are able to lean into courage and lean away from the difference between like socially defined or the belief systems you inherited, and you've stepped into kind of, hey, we need to pull together. And even that attitude just starts to affect people whether you know it or not, right? It just starts to not only just the people around you, but the people they're around. So it's kind of a ripple effect. So, this
Yeah,
living intentionally on purpose, I think,
Yeah,
is more and more what we need to lean into.
The intentionality behind it, and that's what I love about the more to become more influential or have this positive side of persuasion. You talk about these 4 principles
Mm-hmm.
about being original, generous, empathetic, and soulful. I love all of those. I'm a big believer. I always said the keys are authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability, which kind of fits into those 4 principles for sure. But let's talk about those 4 principles, because if I'm sitting here and I'm like, yes, okay, I believe what you guys are saying. I want to become a person of influence, a person of positive persuasion. What are some of the habits? What do I do, and how do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we start with originality, right, Jason? I mean, I love how you talk about David Bowie in your book, like how that's a great example, and he's such a great example of someone who kind of embraced originality
Mm-hmm.
to kind of make his mark in the world.
Yeah, so I use that example because I do turn to role models throughout life, and when I gravitate towards a book or a movie or a musician or even a friend, it doesn't have to be someone who's well known. I always try to deconstruct why am I pulled towards that individual or that story or that form of art, and there's always a reason why, and I try to go a level deeper and not just I like it, but why do I like it? What does it connect? What does it say to me? And David Bowie to me, especially throughout his career and early on, he really was not afraid to push boundaries and playing with all types of different characters and really kind of flying his freak flag and being really himself and comfortable in that. That takes a lot of guts. And I'm not suggesting people that are listening need to become David Bowie, but I find his story so inspirational because part of being original is really following your truth. And when he started in the music world, he was, David Jones starting his career. Bob Dylan was really popular at the time, and he came out with two albums that were folk songs, and they didn't sell at all, and no one liked it. But the record companies were just trying to, make records based on what was popular at the time. And then he went on his own little journey and quit music for a bit and discovered himself, and then came back and started doing his own music and doing Ziggy Stardust and different characters. And that's when he became one of the best selling artists of our time. And it's just a simple story that says when you're following who you really are and you're being original, that's really when success can come. And it's not when you're trying to do what other people are telling you, or if you're copying or emulating somebody else. So the idea of original, and going back to that 0.1% that makes us all different, the building blocks to me of soulful persuasion is being yourself because everyone else is already taken, that famous Oscar Wilde quote, and being vulnerable and putting your personal idiosyncrasies out there, telling your story, understanding what your story is, looking to role models, who do you draw inspiration from and why. And that to me is sort of the foundational level of the other principles, but you really have to dig and understand who you are and what your value system is and who you want to be in the world, because you are uniquely you and you're the only one of you. You're one of one.
Well, in the power,
and I think a lot of people don't do that. And in sales, last thing I'll say is in sales, there's a lot of mirror and matching techniques that people believe in, which are really about, which are really about trying to connect with the other person you're trying to transact with or sell to by knowing what they like. And you like golf? Well, I like golf too. You drink tea in the middle of the day? Yeah, I've been drinking tea. And I think that approach of mirror matching is the opposite of character. And it's really being vulnerable and sharing who you are and your idiosyncrasies that allows the other person across from you to do the same. And that is really, I think, a different way of building a career and for business growth.
I think it's great. And the aha moment for me talking about this is that when you do let your kind of freak flag fly, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I like that.
I'm gonna want to see that. I want to see you fly the freak flag because
you're going to see more of that.
Okay, you got to get that out.
But I think we kind of we're so kind of taught, I guess, culturally to. But it's a fine line, right? I mean, we're taught culturally to fit in and do things for a certain reason. But if you do something through this level of authenticity, it really does, and it can create a tremendous amount of trust and respect and kind of engagement that you can't get otherwise. Now, the danger is when you're letting your freak flag fly or this kind of authentic original self come out, you can't be intentionally saying that. Like saying, "Oh, my freak flag is to have a mohawk, a red mohawk."
Right.
That's not what we're talking about here. It's like getting so self-aware and in tune to who you are, Am I saying that right, Jason? Did we lose your audio? You kind of disappeared on us.
I was just going. My kid was making noise in the background.
Okay, I got you.
So I was trying not to disrupt the convo. But
that makes sense.
Yeah,
what I was
that's
saying.
It does make perfect sense because you don't have to announce, and everyone's freak flag is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
Like David Bowie might be on one extreme, then Richard might be, right. So the idea is just be authentic to who you are, and the way you connect with people is through your values and your stories.
Yeah.
And knowing what they are, like actually writing them down, actually knowing, events that happened as a kid that shaped who you are, who you are today, the things that you love, why they matter to you. Not just, I like that show, I like this book, I like that thing, I connect with this person, but understanding a level or two deeper and why that shaped who you are. And just that's a way of flying your freak flag, because you're being your true self. But you have to do a little research on yourself to really dig in there and know who you really are. And I always find like it's important to sort of think about your story and crafting your story by where you want to end up, and then writing those chapters backwards versus, and this is kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't really take the time to think about where they want to go and then work backwards with their chapters. They sort of ping pong between what life presents, and they end up going in a direction that is almost like the world's guiding their story versus the person guiding their story.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of really being that authentic self and original, and it takes a little bit of work.
Well, I love that. It speaks to what Matt and I believe wholeheartedly here is number one, having an outcome-based mindset. To your point, is like, what am I trying to achieve here? Really doing the work and the discipline and the awareness to figure that out. Working backwards, I think, is huge. And then, I had a thought and it just escaped me there. But standing for something, right? Which is what I heard you say too, Jason. Is like, what do you really stand for? And I do think that foundational, which the vast majority of us do not do that work. We do not sit down and really try to figure out, well, what is it we stand for? And I think if you know what you stand for, and you do the work and the intentionality to sit there and just let people in on your kind of your weirdness and your kind of idiosyncrasies and kind of embrace whatever it is you are, right? That's going to, I don't know, as you say in your book, who wants to blend in and be forgettable, right? So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, how do we engage in these more authentic interactions? Again, if I'm sitting there, I'm buying what the three of us are saying, is how do I go out into the world? How do I go out in the world and be more authentic? Because I guess I wake up, I don't feel like I'm trying to be unauthentic, but I guess I do try to hide things from people, right? Because I'm afraid of what people are going to say
and think.
What would you say to that, Jay? How do we become more authentic?
I think that idea of it's amazing when you're vulnerable and real, how much deeper you connect with other people. And
Absolutely.
So like being a CEO running a company, with 200 employees, I used to start, there's a couple bad habits that I had where I used to, even if things were bad, right? If we were losing a client, we had some business issues, I would always project the image of everything's totally fine. Doesn't mean you have to project the image of being panicked, but I would put up this veil that was just constant drumbeat of strength. And I realized that I was kind of building a fence with connecting with my other partners and my employees. And when I changed that behavior and really leaned into this idea of being vulnerable, it doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're being real. And that allows other people to drop their defenses, and those connections and those relationships and the way you problem solve becomes much better and much healthier, and you're not holding it all in and trying to project an image that is not accurate. And that takes time to learn, but you can kind of chip away at that little by little. And the other thing, it's a lot of mind shifting. One other thing I believe in business is this idea of never be closing, which is trying to let go of transactional thinking and really playing the long game and thinking about every interaction you make. You're building your network, right? Mm-hmm. You're building your connections. It's not a yes or no. Okay, well, I didn't get that client. This job offer didn't happen. It's short-term thinking to sort of not get what you want and move on. It's long-term thinking to think every relationship I invest time in is building towards something bigger. It's not just about the outcome at that moment. And those things can turn into much better things down the road if you look at it as building a relationship and not just short-term transactional thinking. And that's something that I had to learn over time too.
Well, I would argue that if you look at all the significant positive things that have happened in your life, or even if you just think on a business level, if you think about those significant clients that you've got, the ones that just really turned out to be, gems, you think back to those significant relationships that ended up being, either friendships or partner relationships, whatever the case may be. If you play the tape back and if you really kind of studied it, they didn't come from a direct thinking, what can I, an intentionality of like, what can I do to get this from Jason, right? It came through because you were giving or you were adding value to whatever situation. It goes back to that kind of axiom that I believe that every interaction with another human being is an opportunity for development and growth. Mm-hmm. If I go at it with the mindset, and this is what I'm hearing you say, is like, how do I add value in this situation? And that can be talking to the cashier at the convenience store. It can be interaction with a stranger, and certainly it's all the interactions with the people that are important in your life right now. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
absolutely.
Tied along that, one of the things I've talked about in my leadership practice and coaching was this idea of confidence. And I loved your chapter or your segment there in this part about being original. That telling somebody to be confident maybe isn't the best thing. And that really whoa, because I've been doing that a lot over the last
being confident.
You need to be more confident. But you talk about projecting confidence, or more precisely, what we've been talking up to this point is about developing the habits and building that character, and then a natural, authentic confidence is going to emerge. Is that a fair way? Did I sum up how you kind of explained it?
That's right. It's similar when you're telling someone to, not be tired, or to, be surprised. It's not natural to be confident, but there's obviously things you can do that will help you project confidence. And, some of that is walking into situations, educating yourself on the people you're meeting or the room you're stepping into, and having, putting in the reps to gain that knowledge. So you're able to project knowledge and expertise, even if inside you're, shaking and worried and nervous. There's certainly tools you can do to project that confidence over time. When you put that into practice, it'll become habitual for you, and that will turn into confidence. You can't just snap your fingers and be confident. Some people are, they're born out of the womb, not, fearless, but most of us aren't.
Right.
Well, and it takes, I think, a great deal of confidence too to kind of admit. I wish I would. It drives me crazy when I don't see leaders do this. Just admitting when you've screwed up, or right. Embracing your mistakes and just talking about them with confidence. Like, hey, man, I really gooned that up.
Right.
I'll never forget one time when I was early in the Marine Corps, was landing a plane, and the guy I was next to, and man, he landed so hard. I mean, it was the hardest landing that I've ever
Right.
It jarred everybody. Right?
The automatic parachute popped out of your your pack when you hit.
And I was like, and I kind of laughed. I'm like, holy shit. Like,
right.
You know, and then he went right into the mode of like, wow, did you see how the wind shifted? He went into like these
justification
litany of
right.
mistakes. And I'll never forget, I looked back behind the flight engineer sitting in the middle, and the navigator was standing behind the engineer, and they didn't see I saw the look, but I saw the look that the two of them gave each other.
Right.
And it was like, they had this eye roll, like, oh,
right,
yeah, right.
Here we
and
go.
I'm just like, he just totally erased
any credibility.
Yeah. He just would have embraced it with confidence and said, man, that was the
worst landing ever.
Beers are, first round's on me, and second round's on me. I love
that.
Right.
What would have happened, right? Just that little simple interaction, it would have been.
That's a great, I love that example. I have a sort of left turn question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just out of curiosity. How did Mike, how you and Richard meet each other?
How did we meet?
We actually, I wanted to do podcasts. So we were forming Next Level Method. We live in the same city, and I was, for me, I'm an entrepreneur by nature. But for me, and I think this really would help everyone apply to any area of your life. If you want to find out a great way to do something, you go find somebody who's doing it and you ask them questions. And that's something I've been pretty consistent at throughout my life. Is like, I know I don't know. That's what I'm usually good at. Is like, I don't know that. So how do I find out? And so in this case, I was asking our team at Next Level, I was like, hey, you know what? We need to think about doing a podcast, because that's a great way to connect with people that are outside our community, maybe invite them into our community, and how do we kind of collaborate helping people? And so one of our team, actually two of our team members, had heard of Richard. And so I just literally, I think, messaged you and said, hey, you want to go to lunch? And, a couple months later, here we are sitting talking to you, Jason. So that's kind of how that worked.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. That's a great, I love those stories of how things kind of come together. And you touched on something. Go ahead, Mike. You were going to say something.
Matt, sorry.
Matt, I call you Mike. Like
that's okay.
times.
My grandma did. Rest in peace. My grandma had 35.
Because for some reason it has Richard's name up there.
Oh, we need to put.
Yours,
that's right. That's right. We need to put that.
Oh man, I'm gonna look like a bonehead. I apologize.
No, that's okay. My grandmother had 35 grandchildren, so when I would come through the door, I was like Mike, Mark, and then I was always the third name she would get to. Oh yeah, you're Matt, right? But But talking about kind of what we were just talking about, interaction, I wasn't trying to get something from Richard other than just information and true, authentic learning. So I wasn't sitting down thinking, how do I partner with Richard and how do we do this? Mm-hmm. It wasn't that. It was like basically, hey, I know nothing. You're apparently very good at this. How do we do, how do I do this? And then eventually he was like, well, hey, why don't we just do this together? And that's how it started. So it was kind of back to your I wasn't trying to necessarily get anything other than knowledge,
right? But
it was from a true learner perspective. We use the term learner mindset versus knower mindset. It was from a true learner of, hey, I'm just literally ignorant, right? It's not. I lack knowledge in this area. Can you help me?
And I'm thinking too, as it kind of pertains to what we're talking about. I mean, it didn't happen in the first conversation. It was a series of conversations, and I guess what happened in all those conversations, that there was a level of authenticity, generosity. There's originality there. Yeah. There was no
puffiness.
Nothing hidden, right? And there's no ego involved. There's when I go fly planes, there's there's one of my rules is there's no egos in this cockpit, right? We want this free flow of information, and so it tapped into a lot of those things. Go ahead.
I think that's I love that story because I think it turns into. And you mentioned generous, and generosity is another one of my core principles that I believe in. And it is this idea, and you guys mentioned it earlier, but it's this idea, you mentioned it with the cashier, but changing your mindset instead of about yourself and you're protecting your bubble, this idea of giving something away in every interaction. So whenever you cross paths with someone, try to leave them a little bit better off than before you cross paths with them. That is a surefire way to be more influential and more persuasive. And when you do that, really good things come. And that can be, because like in business, I used to hoard my contacts. If I had business contacts, I would be like, those are mine. You have your own. Don't ask me for a reference for something. Because it's competitive, like even any industry, but the advertising industry is a knife fight. You're competing over clients, and I sort of changed that because your world gets really small when you don't have a generous spirit. And when you have a self-centered spirit, your world starts to shrink. And I didn't like that feeling that I had, and I sort of had to practice so that subconsciously I become a generous person. So like I was, originality sort of came more naturally to me. Generosity was a real learned behavior for me because I'm naturally more on the selfish, self-centered angle. But I really found that it wasn't working for me anymore, and I had to learn to have a generous spirit. I mean, I talk about practicing positivity. I was positive, but I approached business in a very closed loop way. And now when someone asks, generosity of spirit can be like asking for time, mentorship, a connection that can help someone solve a problem. Could be a gift, could be letting people know you're thinking about them by sending them, a text or an article you read. But it's just this idea of keeping that spirit going. And I think it's interesting from your, podcast or origin story, how you guys started in that way where, you reached out, that took a step. And then the next step is having an honest conversation that led to generous sharing of knowledge, which led you to where you are today. But when you are generous, good things come.
Yeah, I think back, a handful of stories and thinking about all the interactions both in and out of business, and I understand that reasoning of wanting to hold the knowledge because you worked hard at it, right? And you want to hold it close to your chest, and you feel like if you give it away, like, well, if I give it away and I
Right.
show, I give away the keys to the kingdom, and what does that make me? And the good news is the more that you do open up the kimono and show everybody all the secrets and the trade secrets and the tribal knowledge, it comes back to you in exponential spades. I mean, it really does. I mean, I've never seen it fail. I've never seen anybody who's freely give lose their job, lose their position.
Right.
If anything, they gained more, because what is everybody going to say about you, right? Oh my God, that guy is so good. That guy is so giving. That
Right.
only good things happen when you give it away. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
a huge believer of that. The empathetic side. Anything else on the generosity side? I really love. I'm looking at the clock. I just want to make sure we get all these in. Is there anything else?
Yeah,
on the
no,
generosity
we
side?
can. I think we covered that primarily. I think the empathetic one, if you want me to
Yeah, very
sort of
powerful.
do a preamble to that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So that's really encompasses a couple things. Trying to develop a natural curiosity about
Yes.
other people. Trying to really listen and not judge, which is really, we're sort of, it's sort of our nature to judge other people and compare. And, that's something you can train not to do. Trying to seek out collaborations, not try to do it all yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Find that value in joining forces with other people from different schools of thought or backgrounds. That when I started a business before this, that I did everything myself, and I thought that was the entrepreneurial life, was pitching the idea, making the idea,
Right.
doing the invoicing.
Right.
And I thought it was really hard and stressful. I thought that shows that it's what it's supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started my second business with other people that had different skill sets, that's when the real joy came, and it was much more rewarding than trying to go it alone. And to me, that's a part of empathetic is seeking out collaborations with others and joining forces with them. And then the final thought is, which we talked about a little bit, is seeing commonalities, having that mindset of seeing commonalities versus differences, not looking for what points they don't agree with you on, but looking for what points you can intersect on. And I think just looking for commonalities and not why there's incompatibility or differences is a real powerful tool to have.
Yeah, that's a key aspect of it. You said a couple things that And I really like what you wrote about here about curiosity. I've had multiple debates with people, even internally with myself, because I seem naturally curious. I've always been curious as a kid. It seems something that I'm always reading. I'm always trying to seek. And so a couple things, like, can we teach somebody to be curious? You say in your book, which I love, that it's one of the first people I've seen this, that, it's a skill that can be learned. I don't think I've ever really heard somebody say that. Maybe people have, and I just haven't been listening with open ears. But I was refreshing to hear you say that it's something that a skill that we can learn, and how you learn it. To your point, and it gets to the kind of this kind of bifurcation or this tribal mentality that is so relevant now. Is that we like to think, and if I'm honest, I like to think I know how the world works. And sometimes I like when I find somebody that I disagree with, I like to. It's easy for me to get into this, like, well, I'll show you how you're so wrong.
Right.
And that's the key, right? You're saying is, like, to become curious or naturally curious, just get rid of that thought. Just realize, well, maybe you haven't got it all figured out, right? Am I saying this right? I mean,
that's exactly it. I mean, this is another one that was hard learned from, for me, which was this idea of I would think about people as very different, and I would think about our differences.
Yeah.
And when you just go in with, oh, look, we have all these things in common, even about this issue that we don't necessarily see exactly eye to eye on, but we do have these similarities and crossovers. Start with that, and then see what the nuances are and the viewpoints, but don't start with the differences. It's just it's switch, and that will really help you understand other people much better, because when you see the commonalities, you can then pull out and see the differences and understand why they're differences. You can put yourself in their shoes and understand why they might see it differently than you after you've established what you see in common.
Yeah, and it's almost like,
so that's a great tool that I always use.
And then when you start looking at people, when you start up with the commonality, and then you start to see the differences of those idiosyncrasies of this person, you can approach it without typecasting, without stereotypical mindset. You can approach it with genuine curiosity. It's like, well, why do you like sushi?
Right.
Because I hate it,
Right.
But you can go to, I don't know, maybe that's a silly example, but the point is, if you start with a commonality, you can. Now I see these differences, and I can approach it with a genuine curiosity and start asking some meaningful questions that really might open up the relationship with the person, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly
well,
it. That's it.
Some of the leadership stuff that I've been working on with one of our teams is, am I treating this person like an object that I want something from or want them to do something, or am I treating this person, like another human being? And I think what we're talking about here is if you actually connect on some of the common areas or commonality, or just we all feel fear, we all feel anger, we all feel sadness, or feel sadness. It's just different degrees and under different circumstances, but we all are human beings. We're the 99.9%, right? And so are we relating from a human perspective, or are we just trying to get something in a transactional way? And I think as I've come through business, I know that a lot of the business stuff that I've been involved in was transactional feeling, because that's just all I knew, right? It was like, hey, this person needs to do this, and then I do this. And I think I've always had compassion, but not necessarily the understanding of, oh, wait, it takes more time. I think it takes more effort, right? It takes more time and effort to actually connect in an authentic way and really learn about another person. But once you do, then it changes the relationship. Now we're truly a team. It's not just a bunch of people interacting through transactions, which I think is kind of, I do see that a lot though now with social media and stuff. It seems very transactional, right? If I don't like what somebody said, I just unfriend them or unlike them or whatever, and then they get offended. I mean, there's this whole, and I'm just like, wow, right? We're all go ahead.
It's very dangerous that that thinking, but it is much easier to do transactional approach, and to say that didn't work, that person doesn't agree, that's different. But in the long run, when you think about anything, business,
right, personal relationships,
that transactional thinking it might hockey stick up to where you want to go, then it'll plateau. Whereas playing the long game and having a longer view, it'll be like the stock market. It'll go like up, down, up, down, up, down. And then over time,
Mm-hmm.
it will completely overpower, be more successful, more personal
Mm-hmm.
growth, more advancement when you do play the long game, when you're not just going from transaction to transaction.
And I think on the just the human side of it, fulfillment, right? I mean, if it's transactional, it's always going to feel empty, and there's always going to be like this missing link. And then if we truly connect with and get involved with people on a real level, then there's going to be this sense of fulfillment over time, especially over time. Especially if you're talking about making this a habit, and it just becomes a part of your life. You're going to feel more fulfilled because every interaction is more about the connection than it is what's happening before or after.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm hearing both of you say.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
I'm certainly guilty of this. I mean, I think, to your point, I feel like I'm a compassionate person or this or that, but my gosh, it does take, I think it is the ultimate in work of awareness, of leadership, of becoming a person of influence, of trying to remove yourself and actually, particularly in someone that you vehemently disagree with, or you vehemently have what you care or you classify as character flaws or really a piss poor decision. It's very difficult to put yourself in their shoes and try to see the world from their eyes. It's very hard for me to do. But when you do it and you do take time, it doesn't mean you have to. And by doing that, that doesn't mean that you're accepting of
Right, what they're saying. You're not agreeing.
what they're saying or agreeing with.
Right.
But
But
man,
you're
there's
still relating.
There's a
Right?
tremendous amount of value to really say, well, why does this person see me as an asshole? You know, maybe
Right.
they got a point. You know,
Right. That's true.
and maybe they could be wrong, but
Right.
but again, it goes to the outcome-based mindset
Right.
and the three vital questions like, how do I respond to this?
You know, we had Byron Katie on not too long ago, and a very interesting interview. Very interesting interview. But you know, she was talking about being held at gunpoint, and how she, you know, looked at this person, and you know, where I might have said, "Oh, this is, you know, a thug, and he's gonna rob me and kill me," and all. She looked at him and saw a potential friend, and saw the fear in his eyes, and really was concerned for him as an individual before her own self. So she put him before herself, even though he was the one with the gun. And it was just like, it was just such an interesting interaction of going, wow, if we could all go to that level of really, really, truly, authentically being concerned for the other's well-being. She was concerned that if he shot her, that he would have a bad outcome. She wasn't concerned for her own life. She was concerned that if he shot, she said the words, "I hope he doesn't do this to himself," right? By shooting her, because he's going to end up incarcerated in prison. She's, you know, kind of a celebrity a little bit, and so, you know, there's a lot that's going to happen around that. And so just that genuine, and she was able to walk away from that interaction without harm, right? Because she had a different mindset, and she truly cared about this gunman that was, you know, threatening to kill her.
Amazing.
And then it was amazing. I mean, when we were,
That feels like,
when we were listening, it was like, now that's like some high level stuff right there, right?
Yeah, that's like Obi-Wan
that's like
Kenobi saying,
empathy. Yeah,
Right,
that's like empathy on steroids.
there's
Yes.
nothing to see here.
Yes.
These aren't the,
Yeah,
these aren't the
there's nothing
droids you're
to
looking for. Right? These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it is amazing, and it'd be great if we could reach that level of kind of enlightenment to do it. But I mean, even if you just got a smidgen of it, we're better off. I mean,
Yeah.
my God.
Even having the awareness of, hey, how can I connect with this other person? This is where it begins, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's we got to start where we are.
Well, that kind of segues into the kind of your last principle of being soulful.
Yeah.
This is where it gets, okay, well, what does that even mean?
Right.
It's, you know, soulful is one of those words where it's kind of like leadership. You ask somebody, oh, I know what leadership means. And you have to define it. And you're like, well, it means, and same thing with soulful. So what does soulful mean to you?
Yeah, soulful means to me is really the idea of becoming an inspirational person by doing something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And to me, when you do that, you know, there was a big change for me when I got, you know, to my successful business, running it for a while, authentically building relationships, networking. But I still got to a point in my career where I was like, okay, so that's my contributions, building a successful advertising agency. I don't think that's enough. You know, like that's good, but that's still serving myself. And maybe I did it in an authentic way. Maybe I bucked the Gallup poll of being in a dishonest industry.
Right.
But that wasn't enough. And I felt a little unfulfilled, quite frankly. And then I was, you know, we did a campaign with the Obama Biden administration in 2014, 2015, where we used our advertising power and the resources from my agency to do a big campaign called "It's on Us" that was fighting sexual assaults on college campuses, which happened to 1 in 5 women, believe it or not. So
Wow.
it's 20%. It's a huge number. There's now 500 It's on Us chapters across different colleges in the U.S., and we're really making a dent on the issue. But we did that. We've invested, millions and millions in time and resources to do this pro bono work,
Mm-hmm.
which was the first time I had ever done any social impact work. And it really clicked with me that all of us have the power all of us have a skill, right? We all have a skill or a set of skills. We all have things we care about that we end up not doing anything about in the world. If somehow we can look at that list of skills, the list of things we care about, come up with one way to connect those together. That that's what soulfulness to me is all about. It is about doing something beyond yourself that makes you more influential, that makes you more inspirational. That has a big payoff. It's not the reason you do it, but it has real big implications. Happier, healthier, longer life, stronger relationships, a life purpose,
Mm-hmm.
money that will come back to you because you're an inspiration, even if you're doing a gift of service. And despite all of these facts, there's only like 20 or 25% of people volunteer at all, do anything to give back to the world beyond, you know, how do I get my next car and go to that fancy restaurant or whatever, new clothes I need. And so, you know, maybe it's the word itself, volunteering needs a rebrand. I call it being soulful. But when you look at it through that lens and you figure out, I was thrust on that social impact. Now I do those all the time. It's helped my business grow. I have more things to talk about. I have stories to tell. Our employees have more satisfaction because they're doing this other work, applying their skills. And it can be anything. It can be
Mm-hmm.
you're uh, you're you're an accountant and you want to do once a month financial literacy classes for free. You could be a painter and hold workshops with underserved youth. Whatever skill you have, you can apply it to do something of value. And that it doesn't have to be something massive like working with the White House. It can be small and on what your terms and on your scale. But by doing that, you'll have more confidence, you'll be more inspirational, and you'll be happier and healthier. And it's the act of doing it and not just talking about it. It's about figuring out how to apply skills to something that you care about. That to me makes you a more influential and persuasive person.
I agree.
Great
And,
stuff.
and you're talking about you're scratching the surface, but one part I love about in this book that I'd never seen anybody talk about is, and I agree with this, even on the skill side, is if you are an accountant or if you're a pilot or if you're a podcaster or whatever the case may be, a lot of times we go through life, and I can't tell you how many times I for some reason I get a lot of attorneys who want to get coaching for whatever reason. I think it's because they approach their job with like, I'm going to do what is going to get me the most money. They were a task-based mindset becoming a lawyer, for example. And they go through it and they've done everything, they've achieved all the lawyerly things, and there's still this emptiness involved. But to your point, and this could be, doesn't have to be a lawyer, it can be anything. I think what you talk about in the book is like you go in the skill hunting mindset instead of this kind of task-oriented way of looking at your job. In other words, if I'm a pilot, which I am, and there are times when I got burned out being a pilot, and I said, well, what's next? And I said to myself, well, am I really doing everything I can? And so if I started looking at, instead of what was the end game of being a pilot and making to the big leagues, it's like I looked at things, and I did the same thing with podcasting, right? It's like, instead of looking at it, well, my end goal is this, I'm going to learn everything I can about this and become the best, most skillful pilot, podcaster, whatever the case may be. And by having that kind of mindset, that kind of revealed to me a more soulful pursuit of the profession. Does that make any sense at all, what I said?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. It makes a total sense. And I think there's so many. I mean, I think in nature for you guys, you're through your work here, that's a part of your give back, which is
Of course.
sharing. You know, it's not completely philanthropic, clearly, but you're sharing knowledge, you're sourcing people with information, and you're sharing that freely with your guests. That's a part of your, you know, give back, and you know, obviously there's great things that come with it, right? There's positive things for you guys. You become more inspirational, more influential, more things to talk about, more stories to tell. You become educated on things you want to learn about. But that's powerful. You know,
Right.
that's stepping up and using your network and your skills to share it with other people. That's a great example right there. And if everyone just did one thing to try to be more soulful, it'd be a game changer.
It would. And I think more people have way more, like I said, you gave the example. I used to give that in keynotes about Rosa Parks, right? There was one person who was just got tired and said no.
Yeah.
Right.
And that started a chain of
Whole thing.
events that
Yep.
led to, really, you could say, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You
She
can
said not
say,
today, yeah.
she said not today.
Yeah, and I
Right?
think you know, last point. I know we're running out of time. That people get tripped up when they think about, you know, you can call this purposeful, you can call this soulful, you can call this giving back, volunteering, whatever you want to call it. People trip up on it because they spend so much energy trying to get the exact perfect thing for themselves
Right.
versus looking at what they like. Maybe a lawyer's not happy being a lawyer, but he's still going to be a lawyer. He can use those skills
That's right.
to help other people, and then all of a sudden he's happy that he has those skills versus being depressed that he's just
Right.
putting hours and charging clients. And so whatever skills you've already learned and developed at this point in your life, there's a way to leverage those for good, and it'll make you, you know, feel good about yourself, and you'll be helping other people, and it'll boost you in your endeavors.
I love it,
Love it.
Jason.
Yep.
Jason, I think the book, The Soulful Art of Persuasion, I don't know when you set out to write this book, I guess your target market was probably more, you know, advertisers, marketers, or even entrepreneurs. But it really is, it is a self-help book. I don't know if you know that or not, but I don't know if you look at it that way or not.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean,
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, a marketer can certainly get something out of this book, but it could just be anybody that's trying to figure out their ways to become a person of influence. And I think sometimes we look at the word influence and persuasion as they can have negative connotations, but influence and persuasion is not. It's needed in this world more than ever. Positive influence, positive
influence,
persuasion.
definitely.
And you hit on some great things. I love the book, Jason. I think you did a really good job.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Did we hit on everything? Any last things that we didn't?
I just want to say thank you for, you know, obviously coming on and visiting with us today and helping spread you know, positive information in the world, but also really just thank you for the work you're doing and expanding on that and the contribution you're making in the world. I mean, that's what influences us, that's what inspires us, and that's why we love having people on the show like you. It's just really, I mean, literally, I always write notes, but I've got a whole page of notes here just from our conversations. Some of it's reminders, some of it's new thoughts, but you know, it's always, I always feel filled up at the end of a show with just kind of, it's just awesome to be on here with you and kind of be in that space of lifting each other up. I just love that. So thank you for coming on today and sharing your wisdom.
That. And one thing that, you know, kind of my final thought is, I know you guys you sort of have your code, you know, you mentioned those sort of three things at the beginning. You know, this is my code that I hope people find useful. And I would encourage people to really try to figure out what their code is. You know, what are those 3 or 4 things that drive me, that's going to be my value system. And you guys don't always hit yours. I don't always hit mine.
Right.
You know, we have off days and off weeks, but having them written down and knowing what they are, you can always go back to them when you're off track.
Absolutely.
And when you don't have them written down and you're not clear on them, you get off track and stay off track. And so I think it's really important to really think about what those things are. Take them from wherever you find inspiration. Maybe two two of my principles, resonate with you, and you have two other ones. But I think giving yourself the time and energy to find them is well worth it.
I love it. The book is The Soulful Art of Persuasion, the 11 Habits That Will Make Anyone a Master Influencer. Jason Harris is the name. Jason, how can people connect with you?
I have a website, thesoulfulart.com. My agency is Mekanism with a K.com. And I'm on, the socials at Jason_Harris.
Jason, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I really had a great time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.